So, good day, everybody. Hope you are doing great. Welcome to this class on how to write research proposal. Writing a research proposal. So, a research proposal is something that is always required for somebody who is trying to go into the research or dabbling into whatever research it is. It's intended, it's expected that every person puts some documents together, puts up a write-up. The intention of which is going to be to first of all convince every other person about the fact that that research project is worthwhile in the first place. Secondly, you are convincing others about your competence about it, as well as your work plan to completely this research. So through a document like this, you are putting some things together and then being able to convince others that all key elements that are involved in a research process are contained within your research plan. It shows that you have a focus. It helps you as well as the researcher to put all your ideas together and then to wrap your head around it all. So it's more like a way of you showing how capable, strong, and confident you are as a researcher. A typical research project, typical research proposal write-up is expected therefore to include sufficient information for all readers to evaluate the proposed study. So to this extent, a research proposal is aiming to convince the reader that the project is important, not something that is not worth doing. So it also shows that the research to be embarked upon is based on strong academic basis. Academic basis in terms of the content of the research, as well as academic basis of the person researching. So it's also important because it helps to show how well thought out the research methods are. Because in it, you would have told us what you are using for what and why you are using what and employing what. And ultimately, the research work is feasible. That's what your proposal is saying. So to this extent, for you to achieve success at this, three main things must be addressed by every research proposal. First is that it tells us what you plan to accomplish. What exactly do you want to do? What are you trying to execute? You need to get it written. Secondly, why do you want to do it? Is it worth doing? Is it a project that is worthy? Thirdly, how are you going to do it? These are enshrined within the concepts of research methodology. So I'll give you time to go through these with yourself of the purposes of a research proposal. All of that is clear by now from the little introduction I have given. So to go into a bit more detail about the components of a research proposal, it should have a title, right? It should also have an abstract. And a typical abstract is such that helps to summarize the entire ideas. Usually for undergraduate works, 250 words, 250 words in total. Yeah, that's enough to summarize in a page what the proposal is all about. So you also should have an introduction. That's something introducing research project, as we'll shed more light on in a minute. So you should also have a review of literature. We'll talk about that more as well. And then your research proposal should contain a rationale for the study. What are your aims? What are your objectives? What's your research hypothesis? And how do you want to go about this? With the material and the method. So in this, you tell us about the sample, the specimen, the subject, what kind of animals you're using, what equipment, what procedure, what statistical analysis you're going to be employing. Then you'll talk about expected results. And expected results, in case you are wondering, if you've not executed the research. So where is expected result? How are you expected to know the expected result? Expected result simply means that you describe the nature, what kind of data you intend to extract or to collect, What are going to be your readouts, your research readouts, the outputs from the research? For example, if you are doing histology and you will be running the histology of the brain or the histology of the pancreas, should mention what kind of cell do you expect to see, and what are the expected characteristics of the cell, whether the one you treated with intervention or the ones you assaulted. The liver, what's the expected nature? What are the kind of cells you expect to see in the liver? What are the kind of cells you expect to see in the cortical aspects of the brain? So you are not telling us exactly what is going to happen in each group. Like how will those results be different from one group of your samples to another? No, we are simply describing what a typical result entails. So this will suffice as expected result. And then every research proposal, it's critical for it to have the timeline. That's what you use to checkmate yourself about how much progress you are making. So to this extent, we go a little bit further. Yeah, budget if you are able to. It's also important to help you put together. Um, yeah, you know what to expect. Your finances, how to manage your finances, which makes budget also very important part of the research proposal. And then references, very, very important, very important. So this puts together all the bibliographical details that you had consulted in order for you to put all that research. So what's the typical title? What purpose is it going to serve? Title is important because it gives the reader a concise indication of what the research is all about. So without the title, you may leave people in guesses, in suspense, which is not expected in a research proposal. Picking it up, being the first part of the proposal to be read by anyone, it should give an idea of what I'm about to find in this document that I'm holding. So it should convey the maximum information about that research project in as few words as possible. So it must be detailed and at the same time, shouldn't exceed about 12 to 18 words. Okay? Then the title should indicate the area of research and introduce the research question. So it is often best written after the rest of the research proposal is completed because these at times shape how you are going to be writing your research title, be it at the proposal stage or at the submission stage. Either way, it's more convenient for you to have written all other parts of the research proposal before writing out the title. This helps. It's often the best. It is often best written after you're done with all of that. Going to the introduction. The introduction aspect of the research proposal typically begins a general statement of the problem. We are trying to explain to us why the research is worth doing. We're trying to explain what are the background you're deciding to work on that research problem. So it focuses on a specific research problem and is followed by the rationale or justification for the proposition. So generally, in the introduction, you will be providing the context and you set the stage for your research question. For example, somebody is working on cancer, and then you let us appreciate the fact that cancer is still a disease that is obtainable within the human population, within the society, especially the society we live. Many times when you quote epidemiological data, when you leave out the Nigerian data, the research is as good as not taking note of where the shoe is hitting the most. So you live here, you live around, you live in in the society where you are, then you should be the most concerned about solving that problem that you have decided to solve first within your research community, within your community. So it's important to have the data about what amount of suffering is going on with people in your local community about the disorder of interest. So you are setting the stage. The fact that it's still a disorder that is very much around. So set the stage for that research question, why you are trying to answer that research. The introduction will also show the necessity and importance of the study, and it will briefly describe the major issues as well as sub-problems to be addressed by the research. It identifies the key variables of the research. Your statistics, you should have better idea about the variables, what variables are, the independent variables as well as the dependent variables which you are going to be measuring. The independent variables are the ones you are going to be using. These are the factors you are going to be adjusting, perhaps in terms of the drugs you are administering or some conditions you're going to be exposing your models to. So all of these are variables. You bring them up, you explain why they are relevant things to study, all these in the introduction. So the introduction will present the rationale of the proposed study and clearly indicate why that proposal, while that research project that is being proposed was good at all. Rationale, when you write research rationale, at times it's also called the justification of study, whichever of them you call it is fine. So simply it's telling why the research is important. So you have summarized it in the introduction. It can also be a sub aspect of it that stands out as a sub aspect of the introduction. So the rational aspect, while writing your rationale, what you're intending to do is to describe the significance of your work, why it is worth studying, especially in the African and Nigerian context. So in this, you are not expected to include aims for which the study cannot provide results. So you are not the one that cures disorders. For those that study disorders and also try interventions in them, not the role of a researcher to claim to want to cure people of whatever disorder. That's meant for the clinics. It's in clinics that people are treated. But before any knowledge can be useful to advance the treatments that are offered in the clinic, basic research aspects are expected. Basic research aspects are expected from researchers who would conduct their experiments to test for new drugs, to try to understand the basis of those disorders that are being combated in the clinics. So it's important that the researcher does his job. So the job of the researcher is to help to achieve new frontiers in knowledge, in understanding of the disorder, and ultimately in finding a cure to that disorder. But who administers the cure has to be in the clinic. So this is an interdependent collaboration, right? Yeah, that helps to bring solution to societal health problems. So you don't come and start giving lofty ideas about the basic research that you want to do, in the sense that you mind the language you use to express each aspect of what it is that you're writing, right? You don't over interpret your results. You don't over emphasize your research aim. There is limitation to what you are able to achieve. So you speak scientifically, straight to the point, within the capability of your research. So even when you find beneficial impact of what it is that you have tried as an intervention, the best you can say is that it has been proven that the use of so thing as an intervention had effectively led to the reduction of so symptoms that were measured in so model, in so animal model of so disorder, right? So that's the best you can say. It's not for you to say, I hereby recommend that every sufferer from this disease can be cured with XYZ compound. That's not how it works. So you do not include aims for which the study cannot provide results. And the broad long-term goal, the benefit of the proposed study, uh, can also be described in this rationale. We are simply telling us why it's worth it that we still look into understanding this disorder, so long as you have identified your research aim. So you're expected to think about your research such that you want to employ it to resolve theoretical questions in your research area through the rationale. So with it, you may develop better theoretical models in your area, right? Better theoretical models, better ways of understanding the disease, okay? Better ways of understanding, like having a better understanding of what is the cause of which disorder. These are part of the things you may be thinking about solving. It's not all the time that things have to do with intervention, like bring up the disorder and try to see if those things can treat it. At times, it's also important for you to understand how that disorder is coming up in the first place. So, research works can be investigative to such extent that it's trying to understand the physiological mechanisms of disorders. It's not all the time about finding some interventional thing to try on something. So you, at the end of your investigative study, you may be able to submit a better theoretical explanation to the etiology of disorders or better theoretical models to studying some disorders. So, and think about your research really. At the end of the day, you may influence public policy because of things that you find. And you may also change the way people do their jobs in a particular field and change the way people live. So from this, you highlight your research aim, that is from as part of the rationale, you must be sure of what your aim is and what your objectives are. The aim is the general goal, right? While the objectives are the specific things you intend to measure in the literature reviews the next thing, and with this, they provide a conceptual framework for the readers so that the research question and methodology can be better understood. What we mean is that with this literature review, you will be demonstrating to the expert reader that your research and you, the researcher, are aware you have taken into consideration range and diversity of the literature that relates to the research question. You want to study the impact of a particular disorder or how it works. It's expected that you have read in depth about that research work, about that area, about that disorder, and you are conversant with where knowledge stands, the evolution of knowledge, how it started, what people used to know about that disorder, and what they currently know. What are the latest things that the scientists are saying about that disorder? You wouldn't know all that without doing an adequate review of past literature. Literature simply means the works that have been done before. You have to review them, right? And without you reviewing past literature, you really wouldn't know the updates. And without knowing the updates, you may end up designing a research that had already been done, such that there is nothing new, nothing different that you are studying. There is nothing new that you are bringing to the table. So, a literature review, if you do it so well, it will show that you as a researcher is aware of the most important and relevant theories, models, studies, and methodologies that have to do with your research. Sometimes the literature review is incorporated into the introduction section, depending on what formats are demanded of you, all right, in writing this proposal. But mostly, it is required that the literature review is separated from the introduction, right? Because it enables more thorough discussion and review of the literature. So, in essence, in a literature review, you'll be demonstrating your knowledge, you'll be demonstrating your understanding of the theoretical research issues that are related to the research question. You'll also be you'll be demonstrating your knowledge and the ability to critically evaluate so much information, right? So it's meant to also indicate your ability to integrate and synthesize the existing literature. Because when a group of researchers have checked the, the aspect A of a particular disorder. Some other researchers looked at aspect B in the etiology. Some other researchers looked at aspect C. Some other researchers are suggesting that there is an aspect D to this research in terms of the etiology or the ways of studying it, the ways of modeling it, the ways of intervening in it. You, as a researcher, or as a trainee in research, your job will be to synthesize all this information and make them into one so that you learn from all of these sub aspects that have been highlighted, and then you can create an updated, a well-informed pathway for you to employ in addressing your own research question. So with the literature review, you would have provided new theoretical insights or develop a new model to address the research question. And with it, you will be convincing your readers that your proposed research will make a significant and substantial contribution to the literature. Because some people have done the work to some extent before you, so if there is nothing new you're doing, you're bringing nothing to the table, that would have been a waste of resource. That's research you're doing, that have been a waste of resources and manpower and all sort of things that have been sacrificed. So ultimately, with an appropriately conducted literature review, you will be ensuring that you are not reinventing the wheel. Just to whose benefit is the fact that you are reinventing a wheel. Wheel is wheel. The wheel is simply meant to work as a wheel. The best you can do about a wheel is to improve it. You can decide to improve the way it turns, right? But for you to take it upon yourself that there is another project at your hand and the fact and that's that you want to reinvent, you want to invent a wheel different from this, there is no point. If the wheel has been invented already. All you should consider doing is improve it. In other words, what has been research studied exactly before does not need to be repeated when we are no longer at the stage of revalidation. Okay, so it's usually the lack of appropriate review that would make people venture into research works only to find out that such had already been effective. Ensure you are not that type of researcher. So usually the problems that people suffer, that people go into, dabble into in literature review is the lack of organization and structure. So when people do not organize the data that they have read, the literatures that they have read and what they come to submit, what those studies have have offered, right? So when you do not put those information where they belong or match them appropriately, then you end up having a watery literature review. So you have disjointed information, whereas they are all meant to contribute into one whole body of knowledge. Lacking focus, because at times yeah, there is this risk to drift around, having corroborating the fact that the information are disjointed in the mind of the researcher. So a badly conducted literature review would also be repetitive and wordy. So you don't have to write millions of pages before having been deemed to have conducted an appropriate literature review. All that is required for you is to get the main points in every relevant aspect of that literature review and put them in succinct words, concise words that convey your understanding as well as your proposal. So if a literature review should not fail to cite influential papers, all right, while conducting your review, you select the influential papers, all the important papers, right? You don't limit yourself to little or shady research that have not made so much impact. You also shouldn't fail to keep up with recent advancements, and you shouldn't fail to critically evaluate cited papers. Yes, so a paper can be cited, but to evaluate what they submit. At times, papers are published, and because it was found out that what was published in them had a lot of errors in them, the papers can be withdrawn no matter how many years afterwards. These are the emerging trends in the research world today. No matter how long ago they have been published, they can always be retracted and withdrawn, and the authorship also be derecognized. So keep cite important references and not keep citing relevant material references. You also shouldn't depend too much on secondary sources. What is considered secondary source, what is considered primary sources of scientific information are usually peer-reviewed journals, peer-reviewed journals and articles. They are scientific body of works that came out of a rigorous review process, such that some scientists have looked at it. It's not just the authors that endorsed the work. So many independent researchers have also looked at the work and endorsed it. They have adjudged it as something that is contribution to the scientific body of knowledge. So those are primary sources. But sources that are at the whims of whoever writes it. When you write a textbook, for example, yours, right? They contain your opinion and they are not necessarily reviewed. Even if somebody else writes for you a preface or forward, things that people write, it's still you that dominates the content. So that's why textbooks shouldn't be considered as primary sources, right? They are considered more as secondary sources of research information. So for you as a researcher, it's always expected that you consult the primary sources of research works and research knowledge. Primary sources, peer-reviewed journals. You don't quote unspecialized encyclopedias or unrecognized blog posts, or one will just say they found something on Google. Fine, you can use the internet to find your way into the archives of journals. So be careful. There are citable sources of information just as there are uncitable sources of information. Next is the materials and methods. And this is expected to explain how you intend to execute the research. You put all the information about variables that you're going to be measuring, the research design, how is it going to be, what kind of design are you going to choose, what kind of sample, what's going to be the sample size, what's going to be the species, what's going to be the condition in which those species are going to be subjected for you to have a good research. So as for a sample, trying to know what sample you use, whether it's a human-based research or animal-based research, the point is that you need to know who and what kind of animal models will be involved in the study. If it's human study, geometry, whatever study that has to do with humans, you need to know where to consult those humans, where to meet them, how to obtain information, what are the ethical ways of getting information from them. And if it's animal, which animal model are you using? Which strain of the animal model are you using? So what kind of sampling procedure do you use? What is going to be your sample size? How many animals are you using? And you talk about your experiment too. What kind of measuring instrument, questionnaires are you going to be using? Why do you choose those ones that you have chosen? And are they valid? Are they reliable? These are things you consider. Do you also have the author's permission in cases of works that haven't been, yeah, that are not open access, or bodies of works that still requires that the author be contacted for the benefit, right? All of these. We also consider the procedure of how would you conduct studies. How do you plan to carry it out? What activities are going to be involved? How long will your research take? All of these. Statistical analysis is also very important. How will you be analyzing your data? Briefly describe statistical analysis. How many groups do you have? What kind of test is used when you have two groups? What kind of test is used when you have more than two groups, right? Amongst others. So you must be clear what's going to be, are you going to be testing for significance? Are you going to be making correlation? Or, and and so much more. So limited description is needed of this statistical technique. It will be used. We give a brief description of the appropriate method. So like I said earlier, you also should share your timeline. How long is it going to take you to execute the study? Let's explain what activity will take place at specific specified times during the study. What are you going to start with? How many weeks will that first step take you? How many weeks will this second step take you? So it helps you to illustrate the timing of activities, particularly if they overlap each other in time, right? At times you have 10 stages of study, and three of those stages need to come up at simultaneously. It helps you to track yourself. You don't just leave yourself such that it's until you complete one that you remember that you needed to have started planning for the next one. So for a research study, you need a timeline that has been put together before you commence the study. So the milestones are important parts of any research management. So with this, you can track your progress against the expectations and know in good time whether you are finishing on time, whether you are moving at the right pace. That will tell you whether you're going to finish on time according to the plan or that you are beginning to have a delay. If you start, if you know early enough that you'll be having a delay, you start knowing how to mitigate such delay. So here is a typical example of a work timeline of a research proposal that was written for a grant. And you will see January to December. So this shows that if, for example, the study involves procurement and acquisition of animals, that was going to take 2 months. Then the next stage was going to happen in March. Then the next stage, another next stage was going to happen in March. The next one was also going to happen in March. Then the next one happens in April, the next one in May. That way, till you are able to explain entirely what you will be doing. So this is what is called the Gantt chart. It means the Gantt chart. Gantt. All right. So on the conclusive notes, something you should note generally, the do's and don'ts of proposal writing. Your do's, you should produce a sound proposal. It should be interesting, should be informative, write it in a way that is easy to read with simple English. It should include content page that lists all the content of it. You use clear headings and subheadings in the appropriate fonts and ensure consistency in the fonts that you use for your study that you are writing. Use clear headings. So be concise and precise. You don't say stories, right? You go straight to the point. You're speaking science and not flowery or flattery words. So you use simple language wherever possible. You construct clear arguments. Then you reference your work fully. You may use upper formats because of the peculiarity of your school. And when it gets to, whenever you are required to write in a format different from what you're used to, that every format has description of how it's written. So the upper format is the American Psychological Association format. It's currently on the 7th edition now. So I'm sure this is part of things you would have gone through in your research. You don't. You make sure you don't use words that you are not absolutely certain of their meanings, because at times you may be implying things that you do not mean, right? So know the meaning of every word that you use while writing a proposal so you don't give a false impression of what you intend to achieve. You also shouldn't use difficult words with the intent of impressing your readers. You may end up doing the opposite if you put them off. If you're writing a proposal in order to achieve funding, in order to secure the funding with which you execute the research, if you use words that put off your assessors, then you can as well forget about the grant. Children also use overly simplistic language that do not show your professionalism. So you still find a way to strike a balance between these two extremes. You don't have to repeat yourself over and over again. You give the appropriate information at the appropriate place, and then you would have done the needful. You also do not deviate from the point. So in summary, these are the main stages these are the main contents of a research proposal whenever you are going to write it. So the title of your proposal should be concise, clear, and should indicate your research question. The abstract should include your research question, hypotheses, methodology, and findings in the abstract. Then your introduction should include the purpose of the research, background information, and the significance of the study. The literature review should conduct a detailed literature review, right, to understand the topic and create clear research questions. The methodology should explain what method. And there are two ways to put it. In sciences, especially where we run experiments, we always prefer the use of materials and methods. That's the title. All right. Another way to write it, especially, and this is how what is usually used in disciplines where they do not conduct so much experiments. So it's written as methodology. Okay, so you either say methodology or materials and methods. So materials and methods is usually preferred in the sciences. Then you describe the potential impacts and merits of your research, not when it has a significance. That's in the discussion. So discussion can also be written in a proposal. It will just be a continuation of the introduction in a way. Because in the introduction, you have given a background. In the discussion, you will be giving an expected reaction to the expected findings, the expected result, right? So you're describing that if we find this result, these, and these are the possible implications. These are the things we get to. If we don't, if we do it the other way, if we find another thing, these are the implications. These are discussions also. These are just terminologies that you can keep in mind in order not to confuse you, right? And yeah, citation is the same as referencing. You must know as you read through different sources, just keep in mind where you found what, right? And then you will get the right information from it, and so that you are able to put them to use, synchronize them, and then you acknowledge the authors of those information. All right, this is another schematic. You can feel free to go through this at your leisure time. So research questions in particular, need to be down. So if you identify the research problem, those at least three research. So yeah, it's nice that you don't focus all of your effort in just one research thing. The research theme can be broad. The research questions are more specific, right? Research aim can be broad. The research objectives are more specific, and the research questions are more like you putting your objectives, like what is going to be the impact of this and that, right? So this also gives some terminologies that you can be familiar with. So the hypothesis, for example, let's say the objective, it gives a roadmap of your project, states your objective directly. The study analyzes X, Y, and Z, and is meant to be a source of vital information about 3D. In hypothesis, you state what you are planning to prove, even though you have to keep it simple. The hypothesis is that, there is null hypothesis and there is absolute. In null hypothesis, that is the hypothesis of no change. So status quo, we are assuming that nothing has changed, that nothing is going to change, or that this drug you want to try is not going to work because we've never experimented it before. So that's the null hypothesis. Intent of the researcher is to come and prove the null hypothesis wrong, right? You want to come and check if truly paracetamol is used to treat cancer, for example. Paracetamol and the treatment of so your hypothesis will be that, okay, null hypothesis, hypothesis of no difference. That is that the paracetamol will not work. But the alternative hypothesis, which is what you want to check, is going to work as a treatment of that. So whichever way it goes, whichever one you find right, you report it. So you either prove the alternative hypothesis right, or you prove the null hypothesis. Background, like I said earlier, you discuss the way your research problem was discussed. You also for a larger picture of it. So the significance of the study, the ethical framework, the methodology, expected outcomes. That is, you discuss the results you expect to get from it. And I'll explain. It's not like you manufacturing results. It's just us telling you telling what kind of data will you get from it and what will be the implication of this branch of it that you get. So I would like to close on this point, on this notable saying that scientific research is one of the most exciting and rewarding activities. So I wish you all the very best. Feel free to start dropping questions now. Yeah, best wish you. Said, wishing you all the best.